remember this tall, skinny 7th grade boy named Mark Bailey, and that was my first memory of him. That's where I got the bug for coaching. His 9th grade year was the real breakthrough. You know, he just, everywhere we went, you know, he was, well, I think he was totally undefeated by 9th graders. That was the year that I think we really realized just how special he was that 9th grade year. And, you know, and he broke the school record that was held by a guy named Scott Circumer by 20 seconds in the mile.
Mark came over to high school, to Roseburg High, to run in a race against some guys from the high school. And he, of course, had a reputation at Joe Lane, and everybody knew about him. I'd never seen him before, and when he came over to the field, he was a lot bigger, a lot taller, and looked like he was a lot stronger than anybody we had on our track team. And in particular, Scott Circumer was our big Joe Lane star at the time. And then after lap number 2, Mark just started to stride out.
It's just him and me.
And actually, Mark would take 1 stride for every 2 that Circumer would take.
How do you explain that? I can't.
And Circumer was tough, but he couldn't stay with Mark, and Mark probably won the race by a good 25 yards or 30 yards. So at that point, I knew that Mark was going to be something special as far as our track team was concerned. Well, Robbie said he was going to be tried out as a football player.
That's impossible.
But Robbie counseled him, and you know how he was. He said something, it was going to be that way.
There's a man here with some sort of a parasite on his arm. It's assimilating his flesh at a frightening speed.
He had a choice between either not playing football or forgetting about everything in that respect.
He wasn't afraid of any workout, and he was a hard worker. And yet he was fun. You know.
You ever seen Waddle run? You know that he was the kind of guy that would come from 20 or 30 yards back and be able to control the situation from that position. And Mark was just like that. If he had a last 300 yards or 200 yards, whatever it needed, he'd take off in that period of time and pick up 8 or 9 or 10 yards on the guy with just 2 or 3 quick strides. A rough sketch, but you notice Circumer back there, 3rd or 4th. That's why I'm glad he's not going to be there, because he'd probably punch me out of it. He was the friend of my family too. My wife, 2 kids, they all loved him and thought he was the greatest thing that ever happened. So when he flew into St. Paul, Minnesota, Minneapolis, we went over and picked him up in the car, and we took him back to where we lived, which was on a lake, and we spent a week or 2 just paddling around and having a lot of fun and riding on a bike trail and stuff like that. But, it's just a feeling of being a person that you really respected and enjoyed having and around you.
I said, Mark, you got to realize you're walking around on $10,000 legs.
Oh, look at that! Will you look at that? Isn't that glorious?
Remember.
I'll never forget, Waddle ran a race against Prefontaine in Eugene, and we were at the race, and about 8 yards at the final turn, Waddle sailed by Prefontaine like he was standing still and won the race by a good 12 strides. So Mark had that kind of a capability to be able to pick up quickly and take off and finish it in first place.
To the Nationals then in the 880, then he ended up getting 5th overall, I think it was. So 5th in the nation is just not bad.
It really was exciting, and to have people call up and say, is Mark running today? And then we're coming in, and they were coming in from other areas of the state, and it was very exciting.
My first few weeks on the track team with Mark, we would be running together, and he wanted to work out with me. But it became very painfully apparent that my level of training was not near what his was. Although he stuck with me for a long time, he trained with me and we would run together. There came a time when I remember we were heading down Harvard. On comes Mike Rubrek and John Rogers, and they rip past us like we're standing still, and I'm still struggling because we'd already done a track workout, and this was the distance part of it. Mark looks over at me and he goes, "I've got to get up with them." And as if to explain to me, you know, it's time for me to start working real hard and working at my level. And so just bing, he just took right off and joined them.
Often at meets, there'd be someone who would say, "Oh, well, that boy looks a lot older than the other kids. He's a lot bigger than the other kids." I got up one time and said, "I know when he was born. I'm his mother, and I know that he's the right age for this race." So that sort of shut the guy up, the particular one.
You know, it was a lot of fun for me, and of course, sure, it took some time, but you know, it was something I really enjoyed doing, and I learned a lot by going to those big meets. And
during a district meet, I was struggling to stay in the middle of the pack, and we rounded the first corner. I was watching Mark and a group of other runners in the lead, starting to pull away already, and I was doing whatever I could to stay up close to them. And suddenly Mark peels away, and he starts to slow down a little bit. He gets right even with me, and here Mark is a state champion. He is defending his third time his district title, and so he decides to come back and help his little brother. And he says to me, while we're running, and this is in the back straight in the middle of the race, he says to me, "Are you ready?" And my first thought was, get back up there, you know, win this race. You got to defend your title. Everyone expects you to win, and even the runners in the race are just trying to keep up with Mark Bailey. But here Mark has the generosity and this thought for his younger brother to come back and to see if I had what it takes to stay up with him, or at least to encourage me to try to get up to the front runners. And of course I wasn't quite up to that, and he realized that at the end of the back straight and joined the leaders and eventually won that 800 meters easily to go on to the state meet.
And you didn't even dribble! It's a good time for the great big McDonald's.
He turned up sick after eating at a McDonald's. but he
He's not the only guy that's happened to.
He had run his prelim, and he won his prelim the day before the finals at the state meet, and had won it easily, and was really looking to at least win the 880 his sophomore year. And do you think he could have?
Absolutely. No question about that. He came off the pace again in that one. He let the first lap go easy and then picked up a second one. I think he had an awful lot left, so there's no question in my mind he'd have won that race. Mark Bailey was the one and only original. He had all the skills and the ability and the mental composition, the intelligence, and personality that you needed to do what he did, and you couldn't find anybody else close in that respect.
Things he accomplished, you know, they were due to a lot of hard work, dedication. He went through a lot of pain in the process of some of those races. There's a guy that I think under the right circumstances certainly had the kind of talent that could have taken him to the Olympics. You know, he was that special.
I feel that Mark was a better person, and that strength that he had was not only strength inside, but also a strength of determination, his spirit. He wouldn't give up. He was always there and always ready to go. So I'd have to say that track made him a better person, and he made track a better sport.